everyone. Before we start this session, just some reminders. If you are enjoying these videos that I'm posting, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more videos. We will be loading up the content as we go. Also, please don't forget to leave comments and feedback, whether you like it, like the videos or not. Everything is feedback and invaluable for me. That's the agile spirit. So let's dive right in. Planning poker, hands-on, what is it, and how do we approach it? Planning poker is pretty popular because it's fun and it enables the whole team, all team members, to participate in a fun and engaging session. And at the end of the day, you get the outcome that you are after, which is participation and estimating your backlog. Also, I have to mention that it's built on relative estimation, and typically, in case of story points estimation. You can use planning poker to estimate scaled units of work, such as features, epics, etc., however you define it. But it's typically used for story level or sprint level estimation. All right, so if you are interested to know more about relative estimation, I have posted another video and you can find a link to that video in the comments on this one, sorry, in the description of this one. But I'll just quickly cover some basics when it comes to relative estimation. As the name implies, you are estimating a story by comparing it to a benchmark. And the benchmark typically is a simpler story where you are fairly confident about, the content of the story and how you want to approach it. You take that story as a benchmark and you go, all right, if, for example, that story is a one-point story or a three-point story, let me compare the story that I'm estimating with that one and figure out whether it's bigger in size or smaller in size. Now, when you say bigger and smaller, especially when you're talking about software, there are a number of factors that are important. Obviously, software systems get to become pretty complex, especially when all those software components come together and introduce integrations. So there's complexity. And there's also uncertainty. A lot of times that's risk and uncertainty where you are not 100% sure what you're dealing with. Basically, is another factor that you have to consider when estimating the stories, features, or epics. And there's also the required effort. Some stories are not complex. There's no risk or uncertainty around them, but there's a lot of effort. There's a lot of repetition in what you need to do. So you have to consider that. So that size, volume, risk and uncertainty, and complexity are some of the factors that you use when you do relative estimation or user story point estimation. Another question that I want to present you with is, why do we even bother estimating? What is it? Why is it important to estimate? We can answer that question by presenting you to an example. Let's say you are considering buying a coffee machine, and I give you two options. One option is pretty fancy. It has lots of features, a frother, a grinder, some fancy features. And the other one is pretty basic. And I'll ask you which one you want to go for. And obviously, when you think about it, the first thing that comes to mind, the first question that comes to mind is, how much do they cost, right? You may have a budget, and the first question or first consideration is, does it fit to my budget or not? If it does, then you can consider one or the other. Similar questions can be asked when you are in an agile context and when the product owner is looking at a story or a number of stories that are prioritized at the top of the backlog. And so obviously, the product owner finds them useful or finds value in delivering them. But also she's interested to know the cost of delivering them. And the cost is basically what we're estimating here. We're looking at it, and again, keep in mind that we are classifying the stories into different buckets of cost, of difficulty, basically. And we're saying some of them are pretty simple to deliver, some of them are slightly, more difficult, and there may be some that are very difficult to deliver, and that's sort of cost of delivering them. Combined with the value, basically gives the product owner enough information to be able to make those day-to-day decisions about the backlog. The second factor that I want to highlight is that it is, at the end of the day, it is important to realize that the team are committing to delivering these stories. So sort of mature estimation practices enables the team to deliver on their commitments. If you are not applying those, sort of mature estimation practices, you may plan something and only to find out it's way bigger than what you can deliver in the span of a sprint. All right, so let's set the scene for our planning poker session. I mentioned in the other video about relative estimation that story points are not a unit of measure. So keep that in mind, reiterating it again, that they're not a unit of effort or time or anything like that. They're just a way for us to classify our stories into different buckets. And typically the buckets that we go for are these Fibonacci series, basically. So it starts with 1 and goes to 2. Then you realize that 2 plus 1 equals 3, which is the next number. 3 plus 2 equals 5, which is the next number. 5 plus 3 equals 8, which is the next number. And it goes like that. Above 13, we have simplified it 20, 40, 100, and then there is infinity. The factors that we considered, I mentioned it, I quickly touch on it again. Effort or size, complexity, uncertainty, and knowledge, whether we have the knowledge of what we want to deliver, is it familiar domain or not. So we basically want to grab a story and see if we can put it in one of these buckets. And relative estimation, how do we do it? We compare them to each other. All right, now some physical setup. So there are two ways you can approach a planning poker session. You can do a physical setup or an online or sort of remote setup where everyone joins online. This is the physical setup. So in a physical setup, you have a deck of cards. You can buy them online. So you have a deck of cards and you give each team member a deck of cards. That's pretty much all those numbers that I mentioned earlier. And then the product owner picks a story, a user story that is priority. Each team member picks up an estimate and picks that card and puts them face down in front of them without saying it out loud or showing it to others. So no one knows what their estimate is. They pick a number, put the card in front of them face down so that the Scrum Master who is facilitating knows that they have come up with an estimate. Once everyone basically makes up their mind in terms of what estimate they want to go for, everyone shows their cards, or basically puts them face up pretty much at the same time, and then the conversation starts. And in that scenario, there are basically, once the cards are revealed, there are two scenarios. Either there's agreement and everyone settles on a number. Let's say everyone is a 5, for example. Or it may be that there are differences, and more often than not, there are differences, especially in that first round. So when there are differences, you start the conversation by asking the person with the lowest estimate and the highest estimate to basically explain their line of thought, how they came up with this estimate, what were the reasons, what exactly they saw in the user story that is being estimated that made them estimate it the way they did. And when they do that, typically what happens is the views and the perspectives starts converging, because a lot of times you interpret something, and then when someone else explains it to you, you realize that, perhaps you misinterpreted the story, perhaps you didn't quite understand the scope, or how you need to sort of implement it, test it, etc. So through that first conversation, the viewpoints starts converging, and team members start to basically agree with each other in terms of what the estimate is. I have to mention that doesn't happen all the time, but that's the typical scenario. Then if there's sort of difference or disagreement in that first round, you played one more round. So pretty much repeat the same process. Everyone estimates again, and it may be that everyone agrees to a single number, or it may be that there's still disagreement, in which case we go with the highest estimate. When there is, and you stop there, you don't go beyond second round because it becomes counterproductive. And you don't want to keep in mind that we are time boxing everything, so we don't want to spend too much time. The reason we go with the highest number is based on the fact that people may not come with the same skill set or knowledge, and something might be, really difficult for me, but really easy for someone else. And at the end of the day, if the story gets picked up by the person who has had the highest estimate, you don't want to basically pick it up and then go, okay, I cannot commit to this, I cannot deliver this. And that story ends up slipping, and the sprint goal won't be met. All right, so some of the patterns and best practices. I want to reiterate that the best, or the sort of most value that you get out of a planning poker session is the common understanding that the team basically gets to when they start looking at that story and discussing it, right? That common understanding is invaluable to the team. The second point that I want to highlight is that it's okay to have lots of differences in estimates. People come from different backgrounds, different disciplines. Developers may not know how cumbersome testing user stories and vice versa. But once they hear each other's perspectives and viewpoints and reasons why they estimated something the way they did, the convergence of viewpoints and perspectives starts. So the game should be played a maximum of 2 times, and the conversations after the first round are a great way to get insights into the full contents of this. Now, this is super important, anti-patterns, because a lot of time, patterns are followed, but then anti-patterns, people, sort of go down a certain path without realizing. One is a senior team member, a technical lead, or whatever, influences others to sort of accepting a particular estimate, or even worse, estimates on their behalf. That's definitely an anti-pattern. You want the whole team to participate, and you don't want one single person to influence the conversation. The other thing is when there's differences in the sacraments, if you play the second round, and there are still differences, go with, I don't know, majority or some random number, anything that is not basically the highest number. We go with the highest number because we want to make sure we can commit to anything, and when we commit to it, we actually do deliver it. If we go with something that is not highest and the person with the highest estimate actually picks it up, there's a good chance that the story doesn't get delivered. Development and test effort. I've seen this so many times. Development and test, splitting the story into development and test. That's an anti-pattern, and try to avoid it at all costs, because you are estimating a unit of work that delivers working software, right? So I'm just assuming the context is software, but we can apply to other disciplines. So if working software is the outcome, you cannot say I've finished the development, but testing is outstanding. It doesn't make any sense. Is it working or not working? Has it been delivered? Has it delivered value to the end user? Yes or no? And that's typically translated into definition of done. So go with that approach and don't split. In terms of agile tool sets, there are lots of tools out there, depending on whether you are using Jira or Azure DevOps. I have used several tools on both. Planning Poker by AppFire is the most popular in Jira, and there's also a similar add-on for Azure DevOps by AppFire, which is the bottom one on that list. And there's Agile Poker, which is slightly different to Planning Poker for Jira, and there's the out-of-the-box Estimate on Azure DevOps, which is okay, but not as fancy, and sort of doesn't come with full-fledged features as the other ones. I personally recommend Planning Poker.
The first product that I want to show you is called Planning Poker by AppFire, an Atlassian marketplace that you can add to your Jira Cloud or data center. And it comes with a stack of features that you'll find really helpful. It pretty much covers all the concepts that we have covered so far. From defining your backlog item, you can write up queries in Jira to pick the exact stories that you would like to estimate for a session. And you can also invite all your team members. They can go online, pick the cards using Fibonacci. And initially, it will be obviously hidden to everyone. Once everyone votes, you get an option to reveal, and you can play the game multiple times. You can pretty much replay and pick an estimate. So feel free to browse, but it gives you a lot of options to customize what you want to do as well, whether you want to use Fibonacci or not, and a lot of other features such as choosing the team members who are administering the game, and other features to customize the backlog.